Hi, everybody. Welcome to our monthly Smart Water Software Solutions webinar series. My name is Sarah Milonic. I'm the Associate Director at the One Water Solutions Institute here at Colorado State University, and I'll be the moderator today. Before we dive in and get started, I always just like to start with a couple housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded and we'll post it to our YouTube channel. I'll pop the link for our channel in the comments once we get started, so you can take a look at some of our other offerings there. All participants are currently joined with microphones muted and cameras off. We're going to use the chat feature to track questions. The Q&A doesn't work for all organizations, so we'll stick with the chat. But we'll have ample time to activate your microphones at the end. So if you want to ask anything directly, you can just raise your hand and I can get your microphone turned on. And then finally, if you need any proof of attendance for this webinar for the purpose of earning continuing education credits, you can email owsi@colostate.edu and I can provide a confirmation of attendance, and I'll throw that email address in the chat as well. So today's webinar will dive into the key features of the RAP tool to explore real-world use cases and share best practices to help you streamline your workflow. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our presenter for today and turn this over to him. Tyler Weibel is the Associate Director for Software Innovation at CSU's One Water Solutions Institute. So Tyler, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Sarah. Today's workshop, Streamlining Watershed Management, Unlocking the Power of the RAP Tool, is really going to do a deep dive on RAP. We'll go through that acronym, so don't you worry about what it means. I'm going to start with a little bit of background on where the tools come from and why it is, and then go through the features. Then we're going to have a big old section for Q&A and demo purposes. So don't worry, we got plenty of time to answer all those questions. The RAP tool, you'll get a little sneak peek here, is the Watershed Rapid Assessment Program. This is a dashboard that was thought up through a collaboration between OWSI and the Water Quality Control Division at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE, as a few you probably know their name. This is currently the third iteration of this dashboard. It's really streamlined user access to it, data types, reporting structure, map quality, those sort of things. Today's webinar is really to kind of highlight and showcase all the new features therein. We've worked with CDPHE and specifically the Water Quality Control Division for over a decade, us and OWSI, and have built a whole suite of different tools for their staff to use, for the public to use, and for our analysts to use. So don't hesitate to ask questions beyond just the scope of this tool, or have you thought about analyzing this? Yeah, we've been working in this space for quite a while. We have a lot of different tools that are not this one that leverage very similar infrastructure. To that end, our software portfolio, all housed inside of our own personal cloud, the Katina Analytics platform, hosted at Colorado State University, has a number of different watershed assessment tools. Today we're going to be going over RAP, right? The Watershed Rapid Assessment Program. We have previous webinars available on our YouTube channel and our documentation pages for a lot of these other ones, and we'll be working through quite a few more as they come online throughout the year after they get out of QA/QC and client approval for green lighting some of these. So don't hesitate to ask questions, because we got quite a different set of tools that can answer a whole bunch of different questions. Katina Analytics as a whole is a software platform. You can think of it kind of having three-ish tiers. One of them is just the base, what's it using, right? This is Java, this is Python, this is Mongo databases, this is Kubernetes and Docker to go launch all those images and stuff. And we can go into some of those if you have questions on it, but I'm going to do a real high-level interview. All that's bundled into kind of two major components: the Katina GIS, that's really the interface, and the Katina Compute, that's really where the data crunching happens, services. So the left side of it's kind of the ERAMS interface, where you get the maps and the GIS and the dashboards for NPSPD, RAP, State Water Quality Management Plan, and a few others. And versus on the right side, that's all the technical computations, right? How do you do an MCDA calculation? How do you go fetch national land cover data set and turn that into map raster that you go put in the interface, right? So there's kind of two pieces to that. Looking at kind of the high level of what is RAP, you guys start up in the top left corner, which is from some sort of device, a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, a smartphone, and you dive into the interface. That is RAP. RAP is a React Redux Django application that allows you to access all of the features and summaries therein. It is integrated across kind of two major components. This is external data sets, things like USDA Circle Soils, CWCB's water rights tools, USGS stream monitoring stations. There's a whole bunch more beyond this list that just won't even fit on this page, but this is a subset of that. Those are all external APIs that RAP tied into. And then on the right half of all this is the things internal to OWSI and Colorado State University that we have. These are things like abandoned mine lands. This is things like PRISM data, which is a climate data set. This is collaborations like working with the Colorado Natural Heritage Program or CNHP for a copy of their wetlands and riparian zones data. This is stuff that doesn't have an API like FEMA flood hazard layer. That's not actually published with an API that you can go interact with very easily. So we have internal data sets. We have CSIP services, which are the computational libraries for interacting with data sets for NLCD, climate, and a few others. And you can see kind of how that all stacks together to join together into the Kubernetes implementation of the RAP dashboard. Well, what is RAP? RAP allows you to basically access and review physiological and eco-hydrological conditions in Colorado. What's that mean? That means that you can go look at the base data set for your area of interest, right? That's the maps, that's the hydrology, that's the environmental resources. You can go look at the base set of what's out there across a number of different data sets. A sub feature of this that we're going to go into in the second half of this presentation is that the RAP tool will automatically calculate an EPA 9-element watershed based report for your area of analysis. These are typically, for those of you aware of what those 9-element plans are, those are typically reports that get hired out to consulting firms and spend thousands of dollars to go put together these many page documents on this is my watershed. These are the stressors to it. These are the water quality impairment problems. These are the things we're going to do about it. A ton of that report, a major component of it can be automated because it's show a map of your watershed. What is your population? What is your climate? What is your current attainment status for your water quality impairments? So a ton of those data sets can be automated and have been in the RAP tool to help simplify and streamline the ability to produce these reports. And then there's a whole bunch of, once you have a 9-element report, there's a bunch of grant writing and things like that that you unlock the door with once you have one of those reports for your area of interest. So can really kickstart a lot of integration at the watershed scale for a lot of groups. RAP contains kind of a whole bunch of different sections. It's got basic maps of the data sets. It's got basic tabular summaries of this is your population by location, things like that. It does some preliminary data assessment and analysis. So there's some simple charts, there's some simple pie charts, time series, bar charts, that sort of stuff. We're in the middle of kind of a version 2 of this that's going to go out by the end of the year that's going to have a whole bunch more assessment in there and a whole bunch more data sets. And then, of course, it does generate that EPA 9-element watershed-based report. That report being a Word doc that you can download and modify to your heart's content, right? There's guidance in there that's been put together by the Water Quality Control Division through our collaboration to help you fill in what you need to put into each section, which standardizes their reporting and gives them a better job accepting those kind of reports. But there's all sorts of resources in there. When I say data sets, there's a lot of different data sets, and this slide is intentionally supposed to be overwhelming. There's a lot of different data sets from a lot of different authors. You'll see a ton of state and federal acronyms on here from things like the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, U.S. Geological Survey, Department of Agriculture, FEMA, National Land Cover data set. There's a whole bunch of different state, federal, and local agencies that maintain data sets. The problem is if you want to start off with this is the area I'm interested in and go fetch all those data sets, you're spending a few weeks putting this list together by hand if you want to go assess kind of the base setup for your area. So what RAP does is automate access. So that's a copy of the data set. That's the map. That's the shapefile. That's the time series. That's all the things that go into what you're trying to analyze, the raw copy of that. RAP automates access to all of these endpoints as well as a basic summary of that information. So you have a starting point that is minutes instead of weeks of time. It also allows you to do this at different scales. So there's 2 ways to select your area of interest, kind of at the geopolitical way, right? I'm interested in a particular city or county or municipality. We're in the middle of pulling in DPA planning regions, designated planning agencies. So these are mostly combinations of counties for those of you that are interested in those, or kind of the naturalized flow, right? I'm interested in a very particular watershed. So these vary in scale across what are called HUCs, are hydrologic unit codes. There's 8-digit HUCs all the way down to 12-digit HUCs. And those are just ID numbers. These are things like on the big side, HUC 8s are the big ones. So that's things like the Catch-Salputa watershed up here in Fort Collins that runs through town. An example for you Denver folk is something like Clear Creek. That's a HUC 8 down in your neck of the woods. You can get smaller as you go through. The ID number gets longer. These are things like Bear Creek on the west side of Denver, Sand Creek that runs from Aurora all the way up to the north end of Denver, all the way down to HUC 12s. These are the little guys. These are things like Fish Creek. These are things like just the headwaters of Cherry Creek. There's many. There's a couple thousand HUC 12s across the state of Colorado versus HUC 8s. I think there's like 100. So you can kind of get the scale there. But the idea is you can specify any of these and get the exact same apples to apples comparison of this data set, that summary statistic, this data set, that summary statistic. So when you or CDPHE or your client are trying to compare areas or analyze areas, you're getting a very one-to-one comparison that matches from a standardized framework. Walking through this a little bit, the RAP interface, and we'll show you links at the bottom of this so you can access the tool, is pretty straightforward. It's not map heavy. It's got a summary of what the RAP tool is. It gives you a selection on the left side for your area of interest. You'll notice there's a few features up at the top. There's a dark mode selector for those of you that prefer a darker screen color. It's pretty common in apps these days that you can have a black version versus a white version, just for eye strain and things like that. You can also submit bug reports. That's the middle one, little bug. You can also take a survey, a feedback survey from CDPHE. Basically, did you get your question answered, and what are things that you want us to work towards in the future? I apologize for the noise. It's hailing in my office. So it's a little noisy, and I'm sorry if that comes through on the mic. And then, of course, below that is where you actually select your area of interest and what we're going to walk through. So you specify your boundary type. This is where you pick whether that's a city, a county, a HUC 8, a HUC 12, HUC 10, all that sort of things. And then the second one is you can either scroll through and pick the one you're looking for, or you can type in, I want to assess Larimer County. Start typing Larimer County in that second one, and it'll autofill it. So I've highlighted what that looks like once you've picked an area of interest. I picked the HUC 10 on the west side of Castle Rock. This is a random example across the state that's fun to look at, is West Plum Creek. You'll notice that I've enabled the map. If you look up in the top right corner, there's a little icon up there that will actually let you toggle, I only want text content, right? Text, tables, graphs, or I want all map content, or I want half and half. I want to see some of the map. I want to see some of the graphs. So that button up at the top will toggle between those kind of three versions of how much are you looking at the map, all, some, or none, versus the content itself. Once you have your area of interest selected, it'll draw on the map. That's that black line, right? I'm looking at West Plum Creek, showing just south of, or just west of Castle Rock. On the left side of the dashboard is where you get to interact with it. Front and center is the button up at the top that'll auto-generate that 9-element watershed report. You click that, it's going to pop up a little thing that loads all the data sets incrementally, takes a shot of all the map generations, and then spits out that Word document. That takes about 5 minutes. Or so, depending on the scale of your analysis, longer for bigger areas for obvious reasons. Please note you have to stay on that page for the map capture to work properly. If you switch off of that tab in your web browser, it isn't rendered in the same way in the behind the scenes, and you can't actually generate the map image correctly. So stay on that while it's loading for those few minutes. You can just throw it on another monitor or something, but you got to have that tab open. The bottom of it is where you actually get to pick the data sets that you want to assess. These are grouped by convenience across topics. So things like climate snowpack, that's things like PRISM, GridMet, SNOWTEL. Those data sets are going to be under there. Environmental resources are things like threatened and endangered species, wetland extents, things like ecoregions are going to be in there in the future. Then you've got geology and soils. You got your hydrology and streams, so basically the dirt, then the water. You got your groundwater side of it, your land surface side of it, and then kind of an other category for a whole bunch of other stuff that's none of that. And we'll walk through each of those. Going forward, when you pick one of those, you'll notice I open the climate snowpack. You get an option on the left that actually lets you load it first. Once it loads, you can choose to view it. That'll open the content on the right. You'll notice I've switched to the 50-50 view. I could have all map or all summary if I wanted. Depending on the data set, it'll change this content, right? So you get the map that's pertinent to whatever you have selected, right? I'm viewing PRISM information. In this case, I'm looking at annual min temperature, right? What's the lowest temperature averaged across the year for these particular areas in the PRISM data set? And These are all derived from the Prism's normals data set. So you have a summary of what that data set is. You've got cross links to where it came from. You also have coverage extent, right? How big does this go? If I'm interested in Illinois instead of Colorado, RAP isn't set up for that. We can have a side chat after this about that. But what's the extent of that particular data set? There's a lot of Colorado state specific resources. There's also a lot of national resources. Going on down, just cherry picking a few examples, walking through this. You can look at things like geology. This will give you a tabular summary that you've got your ID for your formation, its codes, its generalized classification, right? I don't want to read what COTRW:0 is, but I know it's a sandstone. Primary sandstone with secondary claystone. You also have that geologic age classification, right, as a tertiary, Cretaceous, Devonian, all that fun stuff for the geologists in the crowd. But you can get that sense of what's in there. You get the same thing for soils. You can start stepping on down through into some of the hydrology data sets. These are things like the FEMA flood hazard layer, right? So when you're looking at an area of interest, you can see the extent that they've analyzed. You can see which areas are other, which are the 500-year floodplain, which are the floodways that have been designated. You'll also get things like areas impacted by levees or flood risk reduced due to presence of levees and things like that. You'll notice that these sections have more data in it, right? This particular one has a description, right? It's a link out to FEMA and what we did to go get them. It has the attribute tab. So just like the one before it, we have a table summary of just that same information. Then there's an analysis one. That's where you actually get like a pie chart of how much is my watershed is each one of those areas, right? So how much of my watershed is the 500-year floodplain or my city or my whatever boundary you end up picking. You can see that. You also start to see the breakdown of some of those data sets on the left. Now that we're getting into the denser ones, you see FEMA, you see the stream monitoring locations for flow, for water quality, your water quality segmentation. So that's a data set directly from the CDPHE's Water Quality Control Division, so you can actually get the stream ID numbers. So when you start somewhere and say, I want to care about Bear Creek, which part of Bear Creek? If you're going to go to the state and talk about doing anything on that segment, you need the ID number that they use. So you need access to their data set to go look it up somehow. You can also look up things like associated water quality standards per segment. So you can get a general sense of what is allowed for E. coli, for iron, for lead, for temperature, for all those kind of things. Marching forward again, we can look at those monitoring stations. You'll notice that this highlights them by database, right? So we're tapped into the Division of Water Resources, the Colorado Division of Water Resources specifically. We're tapped into the EPA STORET/WQX dataset, kind of both names on that one. And then USGS, of course, right? There's a lot of water discharge data available from USGS. There's a lot of water quality data available from STORET. This is a generalization for you guys. Again, you get that tabular summary of what's your station name, what's your ID number, what's its type, right? Is this a reservoir monitoring site? Is this a canal monitoring site? Is this a stream monitoring site? And then who it belongs to, right? It may be from the EPA STORET data set or database, but who actually runs it? In that case, one of them is Army Corps of Engineers out of Omaha looks at one of those. So you can get all of these summary pieces out of here. And again, there's the overview tabular summary, and then there's actually the analysis section. You can go into a low flow analysis. You can go into a water quality analysis. That's all stuff coming in online later in the year. You can keep drilling down into land surface. You'll notice a number of these data sets auto get selected when you run that 9-element plan. Some of them do, some of them don't, because they are or aren't in that plan. If you look at something like the irrigated agriculture data set, this one's a product from the Division of Water Resources as published by Colorado Water Conservation Board. They have irrigated agriculture maps going all the way back to, I think, the 1930s, depending on what part of the state you're in. They break down your crop type. So you'll notice there's a handful of crops. You see the little orange and blue dots inside of my polygon. This particular watershed is not dense in agriculture, but it's still interesting to look at. So you can see how crops have changed over time. You can see how irrigation practices have changed over time. You can see how total acreages have changed over time, right? There are boom years and there are bust years and there's droughts, right? So you can see how those things change and impact that particular area. And again, this is not the tabular version. This is actually autograph that for me. Show me a stacked bar chart. Show me a pie chart for the particular year I'm interested in. I want to look in 2005. I want to look in 2010. These are all interactive that you can work with. Similarly, again, just marching straight down some of the list on the left side, if you want to look at population data, this is the U.S. Census Bureau population data. There's some assumptions and methodology that's documented in the user guide for this tool on how those get calculated at the edges of polygons, right? So when the census has a unit that they calculate a population off of, some fraction of that's going to land inside the watershed, some fraction is going to land outside the watershed. So there's some assumptions on how to make sure that you get the right population for the fraction of that square that you're keeping. So you can see what population densities look like. You can see what total population looks like. We'll work on integrating the state demographer's office and projection information to this, so you can see kind of where population is and where population is going to go. Both of those numbers are going to be in here. You can look at things just like irrigation infrastructure, right? So canals and ditches is again published through a combination of CWCB data from the Division of Water Resources, as well as NHD data from USGS on where canal segments exist on the map, just little stream segments that are classified as a canal. So you can see the summary of the ditches, the summary of the canals next to each other. I will stress, though, kind of as an aside to all this, there was a very intensive multi-month QA/QC that went into this tool. That's for the data sets. That's for how we transform the data sets, right? So one's just access, one's what we do to it, making sure summations and presentations and map coordinate systems are all QA/QC correctly. So our developers did it, our supervisors did it, our stakeholders did it, both inside of OWSI, both outside of OWSI, for this area of the state, that area of the state, dynamically for 100 randomly sampled watersheds across the state. We've done a very intensive QA/QC. So when we say that there's 10 acres of irrigated agriculture, that we're confident that that's 10 acres, right? From the raw data all the way to the front end presentation of it, we're confident of all those calculations. So you can hang your hat on some of those numbers. Transitioning away from some of the data sets, kind of what is an EPA 9-element watershed based report. These are the different sections in a 9-element report. They actually alphabetize them, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, rather than number them, which basically walk through what are the pollution sources in your area, what are their expected loadings and necessary reductions to meet water quality standards, what are the non-point source management measures that are being implemented to achieve that, what are some technical and financial assistance frameworks that are necessary to achieve that, designing an education and outreach schedule so that you can actually work with the community to achieve those targets, an implementation schedule, interim milestones for how, like, we're going to achieve this by that time period, indicators on which to measure your progress, and then, of course, the monitoring, right? So how are you going to say you did or didn't achieve your particular 9-element watershed plan goals? So this is really about water quality monitoring and water body attainment in the realm of 303D listing and TMDL listing. This is really about kind of the water quality assessment side of it. Well, all of that is a very intensive report. So what we've done inside of the RAP tool is taken a template put together by the Water Quality Control Division to provide guidance in a very unified, consistent framework that says, put this in this section, put this in this section, put this in this section. So you have a starting point. Then from the RAP side of the tool, what the tool actually generates is it does your maps. It throws in a scale, it gets the layers, it gets the colors, it gets the area of interest, it puts all of that together and just generates your maps. When you think of who needs 9-element plans, not everybody has a GIS technician on staff that they can go say, go give me these things. It's hard for a lot of the smaller municipalities and groups to have somebody put these together. So when the state automated this, they're really increasing the accessibility of these particular reports and features to the general public. It also includes those charts, those tables, those pie charts, those summaries, those time series, all of that goes in there. So things like that population time series of what is my population in this watershed over time, that gets auto added into the report. So you don't have to go relook up that number and how to graph it. It also includes all the summary tables, right? So the list of monitoring locations, your water classifications and attainment summaries, and so many more. I'm not going to itemize every one of those because we'll be scrolling through a 90-page document. But the point is, the tool generates this for you, and then you, the author who wants to use that 9-element plan, has a very consistent, very complete starting point to add all the pieces that talk about your particular causes and sources of pollution, what you're doing with your community about it. What are your targeted load reductions? What's your management plans, right? That's the state level, that's the municipality level, that's the local level, kind of the multiple scales. That's why all of this can get tailored to your area of interest. But RAP gives you that huge leg up of here's the starting point in the raw data set processed in a few minutes instead of hours. From there, I'm going to walk through a little bit of the report, and then we're going to turn this into kind of a live demo, and we'll talk about a few of the different data sets and kind of walk through some of the features in there. It's a Word document, so make sure, first off, your pop-up blockers are turned off so that you can pop up the little download this file when it's done creating it for you. But it's a Word document, so you can, anyone with a laptop can go mess with the Word document and change it. So there's a bunch of guidance wording that says, okay, this is why it's here, this is what it's used for, what you should put in here. All the blue text is basically guidance from the Water Quality Control Division on how you should write this thing. RAP will go ahead and insert the pieces that you care about, right? It'll show the base map of your watershed, right? So I picked West Plum Creek. I got my base map of West Plum Creek. It's got a scale, it's got north orientation, it's got all the things that say this is the area I'm interested in. It also gives a list of the Huck 12 watersheds that this contains, right? So all the smaller watersheds, that's useful for naming reasons and planning reasons. It lists all those pieces. So that's kind of an example of a map inserted in here, as well as a table generated from RAP dumped into this particular watershed. So all the black text is generated by RAP, as opposed to the blue text is guidance from the Water Quality Control Division. This extends to that water body impairment summary, right? So per water segment that exists within this area, is it fully supporting its agricultural designated use? Is it fully supporting or not assessed for its water supply use, right? And is this a lake? Is this a stream, right? Is this acres of a watershed that are or aren't attaining, or is this length of the river that is or isn't achieving? From there, you can start looking at the maps that are dumped in there. So you can see things like annual precipitation. This is that PRISM data set. So you can actually see what part of my watershed gets how much water averaged over the year, right? So the high parts up in the mountains, they get some more snowpack. Low parts are down in the foothills area around town. You can look at things like your drainage classification, right? So this is a data set from USDA. You can see, okay, what fraction of my watershed is well drained versus poorly drained. You can look at your land cover, right? So these are things that are useful when analyzing, okay, how much forest land do I have? How much urban area do I have? How much shrubland do I have? How much cropland do I have? You can start answering those kind of questions. You get the pie chart out of this, you get the map out of this, you get the pre-defined colorization. Land use classifications actually have a predefined color scheme, and rather than you manually trying to reproduce that after getting that file from somewhere else, this is automatically included this way so that you can save yourself the time of that's the correct red that NLCD uses for developed low intensity urban areas, right? All of this is accessible on the RAP tool. So if any of you guys are interested, you can go to cdphe-rap.erams.com. CDPHE is the sponsor of this particular tool, and why it's tailored that way. That'll take you straight to the tool. We also have a documentation website on our side of things on erams.com. That's the second link. I believe we're going to make these slides available at some point so that these are a resource. But the idea is that both the tool, its associated documentation, that RAP is going to be updated in the next couple weeks with a copy of this webinar recording, so that from the RAP tool, you can go see the webinar and what's in the RAP tool. You can get all of those kind of end-to-end as a resource that you guys can go access it. Generally, from the OWSI side of it, we have user guides, we have instructional videos. We are in the middle of one of our webinars, and we do in-person workshops and the like for all the different software that we've built for CDPHE, other partners, and things like the RAP tool. So if you think that there's a particular use case that you or your staff or your watershed group are interested in, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can talk about what sort of collaboration we can have for making you aware of our tools, giving you access to our tools, working with you to put together a workshop. We've done this in the past with Trinidad. We've done this in the past with Steamboat on some of our tools, specifically the RAP tool, to get their watershed groups more interested in using our tools to access and assess their data sets. At this point, I will open it two-part. One, I'm going to switch what I'm sharing and I'm going to show you the Wrap tool live and actually walk through some of these examples with you so you can kind of see what it looks like and feels like instead of just screenshots. And two, I'm going to open it for Sarah to start summarizing some of the questions and answers that you guys have or are about to start submitting to the chat. And we can start talking through either in the slides or the Wrap tool itself, walking through questions about data sets, questions about analyses, questions about the 9-element plan reports, or anything else beyond that. So I'll switch what I'm sharing, and Sarah, feel free to summarize and unmic people.
Thanks, Tyler. I don't see any questions yet in the chat, but I'll keep you posted.
Happy to. So just as kind of an overview, while we're waiting for a few of those to stream in, this is the Wrap tool. You'll notice the URL is cdphe.wrap.erams.com. We're ERAM, so all of our web tools are through that. You get the little summary of what it is. You've got links to the landing page on our documentation site. You've got a quick link to the bug link. You got a quick link to the survey. The user guide's also here, so you can actually go look at, if I want to go look at the user guide for this particular report. This was published last month, so you can go through and review it. You can see all those pieces about where these data sets come from. What are the analyses? What is it doing? What does each feature do, right? You can walk through all the different pieces. That is deeper than what we're going over in just the webinar, but all that's available to you. Just as kind of a highlight, this is the map toggle that I was talking about. So you can either look at a map heavy or a text heavy version of this. You can split it, right? So I can look at a little bit of my interactive map. It moves. I can zoom in. I can look at my extent that I'm interested in, or I can look at all of it, right? If I just want the map content. There's a few features in here that I want to walk through live as opposed to in snapshots. You can switch your base map, right? Do I want to look at something like satellite imagery, or a hybrid of satellite imagery that actually still labels towns and things like that to keep it easier to orient that, oh, Fort Collins is up here. That's all available over in this left menu. You'll notice there's a right menu here that looks very similar. This one is actually the layers that are going to be present. So when you have a data set loaded in here, you're going to have the boundary for your watershed. You're going to have the layer itself, say drainage classification from Circo soils, right? You can turn on and off that layer and look at the colors, right? You can get the legend for that and mess with it. You can also download those layers as a raw file out of this. So you can get the shapefile, you can get the raster, you can get all the GIS-y things for that particular layer. You can also take a screenshot of this map if you want to just take it, if you want to change the orientation of the map, change the base map, you can take that screenshot, export it, and replace the one in the report, right? You can tailor this to what you want to look at instead of what it defaults to look like. All of those are generic map features. Sarah, I think I saw a couple chat bubbles pop up, so I'll give you a chance before I dive into something next.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to address this in your demo, but Cindy is wondering if there's an option to use a specified watershed that isn't a HUC 8, 10, or 12.
That is a feature coming out in December, is the short answer. Right now, it's limited to just those default areas of interest. DPA regions are going to be added to that in the near term. And then by the end of the year, we're going to have a upload your own or draw your own kind of integration so that you can say, I'm not actually interested in this particular watershed. I want to draw one over here that's smaller or larger or different, right? Absolutely, that's a feature that's coming out. Going forward, we'll keep going. This is your drop-down selection. This is where you'll actually pick. There'll be more options as this comes online, or more of this gets expanded going into the future through our collaboration. You can do something like, I want to look for a HUC 10. Well, I don't know what kind of HUC 10s there are. I could look for, like my example, Bear Creek. I want to go look at Bear Creek in Denver. If I choose select, that's going to zoom my map. That's going to draw the area I just picked on it. Again, these are still all interactive maps. You can go see where Bear Creek is in Denver, right? It's the west side of town. If you don't like what you've picked, you can go back to your home page and you can reset it. Or if you're all done analyzing watershed, want to start over and look at some other watershed, you can absolutely just wipe what you got, start over and go back. And you can do that for whatever area you're interested in, right? So if I wanted to go back and do the cache the pooter, I could go say my HUC 8 and I want to look at the pooter. And that's the one up here in Fort Collins. So we're going to zoom back up on the map. We got our Fort Collins watershed. That's my HUC 8. It's a much bigger area. Or not. I don't want to keep that. I want to go back and do Plum Creek again, right? But this time I want to look at East Plum Creek. So I'm more interested in the Castle Rock side of it versus the not Castle Rock side of it. So you got West Plum Creek on this side that we did in my screenshot. You got East Plum Creek on this side. You can do that. You can mess with your base maps. You can see what they look like, all of that. From there, you can either click this Generate 9-element report button. I will do so after I open another tab, just to show you kind of the difference between the two. This one will pop up that loading. It'll load each of these data sets in parallel, right? So you're not waiting on these in sequence. Some of them are faster, some of them are slower. They'll come online as the little check mark says that that particular step is done. And these are all the sections that get auto-populated into that report. So like climate data is part of it, stream monitoring locations is part of it, geology is part of it, all those pieces that go into that report. You'll notice that there's a few sections. First step is to query the data sets. Second step is to actually generate the map screenshots, and that's why you have to keep this tab loaded and active. And then the last part is it actually sticks all of that content into the Word document and then downloads it. So you can see at what point this is all done. We've finished querying all the data sets. You'll notice right now what it's doing is it's going through the map and it's toggling, screenshotting every one of those. So you've got your average temperature, you've got your average precipitation, you've got your wetlands layer, you've got your stream monitoring data set. You can watch that toggle through as it's working on it. That's why this is a pop-out, because this is a web front end taking a very high quality image to export to the back end for Word document inclusion. You can just sit patient, let all those come through. Look at all of the various data sets. I won't talk too much longer because we're almost done with the data sets, but this is a 2 to 3 to 5 minute update. We're working on making that faster. We're changing some servers behind the scenes. We're working on a few other things with our stakeholders. But once it's done with the maps, then it actually puts all that into a Word document, gives you back the interface. You can go back to whatever you want to do. And then it pops open this little window that says, okay, go save it. Well, I'm going to go save Wrap Report of East Plum Creek. Once it's downloaded, I can go look at it. And it's, like I said, it's a Word document. I'm not going to scroll through all of it. I just want to show you the general outline. So these are the guidance of kind of what CDPHE has put together for guidance on what goes into an 9-element plan, kind of the elements, the categories that they're interested in. Gives you some default definitions. Then it gives you the outline of the document itself, right? This will say this was generated by this version of the wrap tool, generated on this date, produced by, go put your names in it because you wrote it, right? It gives you that basic format of the introduction of your watershed, what's its current status, what's it look like for all those physiological layers, right? So biology versus land cover versus human activities versus agriculture, all the way down the list. Then you get into the other parts of the 9-element plan, which is what are the water quality trends? What are the data gaps? What are my goals, my objectives, my reductions, my implementation plan, the outreach? So this is a one-to-one with all those 9 pieces that you can see. And as you scroll through, you can see guidance on these are ideas of how you can structure these sections and what you can put in there so that you can tailor that to exactly your area, exactly your watershed, exactly your place of analysis. And then it's got your screenshots, right? So this is a screenshot with the base layer I picked, not the one that it defaulted to, the one I picked. So you can change that. You can adjust your zoom levels, all that kind of stuff. It gives me the list of these are the HUC 12s that belong inside of this HUC 10. All those kind of default summaries. You'll notice that the vast majority of the maps are appended to the end of the report. This is because the maps are formatted in a landscape section because it's easier to view more map when it's a horizontal rectangle instead of a vertical one. You've got your stream impairment status, you got your topography, you've got your precipitation, and you can just keep scrolling through these and substitute as necessary for other data sets, right? So I can look at my geology, I can look at my soils, I can look at my wetlands, my impervious areas. That basically means concrete, right? How much it does or doesn't run off when it rains on it. That's what impervious means. Land cover, you got all those classifications of is it the urban area of downtown Castle Rock or is it the natural end of the mountain next to it? You got a similar one from a different data set. So NLCD is a USGS product, NAS is a USDA product. This one actually classifies all the different crops that are being grown there. So you get a little color in that one. Your Census Bureau maps, your irrigated agriculture, which is very minimal in this spot. Your monitoring sites along that, your canals and ditches, your wastewater treatment plants, and then you're at the end of the report. Once you've done that, you'll notice that all those different data sets that are auto included already got clicked. So it's basically the equivalent of clicking that load button and doing it for you so that you don't have to do it. Once you have it, you can go view it. That's going to load that data set. You'll notice that the legend changed to have the monitoring locations. They're all on here. You can hover over these. You can click on these. You can get a little summary of what they are, right? This is the Plum Creek Reclamation Authority monitoring site. You've got East Plum Creek. You've got, walk down the list of all of them. If I want to toggle my content and see my map versus my table, I can toggle between what monitoring stations am I summarizing and what are their attributes, right? I can scroll through and say, okay, these are lake sites, these are reservoir sites, these are stream and river sites. You can see who they're monitored by, right? Chatfield Reservoir is doing a few of these. Department of Public Health and Environment's doing a few of these. USGS is doing a few of these. You can sort, you can select. The next feature going out next month is going to be the analysis section where you can look at low flow statistics, you can look at water quality trends, you can look at water quality analysis, all those different pieces so that you can pick these for that subsequent analysis because you don't want to automate. There can be hundreds or thousands of these monitoring sites. You don't want to automate every analysis for every one of those. It's too cumbersome to load into a web browser. So you can pick and choose which one you're interested in assessing, but that'll all be a feature. I'll pause real quick before I keep going into a few more of these. Sarah, have a few questions come in?
Yeah, would you mind just revisiting some of the pop-up blocker issues that people might be experiencing? There's a couple of specific error messages that are shown in the chat here from
Sure. Let me
Paul and
read those real
Samantha
quick.
as well. Yeah, it might be easier to have you read them.
Failed to generate report. Error, internal server error. Pop-up blocker is off. For the internal server error, what area are you analyzing? What type of area?
Paul, I'm gonna allow your mic, so you should be able to unmute yourself now. Samantha, same for you.
I think Paul's still muted if you're talking.
Yeah, I can chime in real quick. So, it seems like from what Paul sent as well that our pop-up blockers are off, and I was able to get a few of those EPA 9 element reports. I got 4 of them. And then me and Paul are having the same error of the internal server error. It loads all those categories except for the maps will load last, obviously. And then it says failed to generate.
Okay.
Report.
I was testing this last week with our developers. There is a data size limitation that this version, this 3.2 version, you'll recall that it's version 3.2.4. We've got a version 4 coming out in the next month that's got a whole bunch of enhancements. And one of those enhancements is better data handling for speed reasons. So if you're trying to assess a county, if you're trying to assess a HUC 8, those are most likely going to have some download problems to your browser because of the scale of information. We've cleaned that up in the next one that's going to go out. But almost certainly that server error crash is because of the size of the data set on this iteration. So short answer is wait till next month and it'll be better. The interim would be analyze a smaller area and join them together.
Yeah, me and Paul are both analyzing HUC 12s.
Oh, 12 should not be doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. If you message me the exact name of your HUC, I'd be happy to take a look at it offline, and I'll follow up with you. Feel free to put I think I can get your contact info from the chat and from the webinar, so I'll reach out after this and we'll get that sorted out.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, 12 should not be crashing ever.
Okay.
Only the big ones crash in this version.
Awesome. And I just threw Tyler's email address in the chat queue as well.
Don't hesitate to reach out. That's what I'm here for. I'm a resource. CDPHE wants me to be doing outreach and education on our tools. So that's part of my job description, is to make sure you guys understand what tools are at your disposal and help you through any hiccups that you have in its implementation. Cool. To clarify on the pop-up blocker, this is Chrome, just as a point of reference. So if I wanted to regenerate my 9-element plan, it's going to retake my map screenshots, which is fine, but I'll show you where it pops up because it's easy to miss. Chrome actually does a really good job being pretty quiet about his pop-up blocker, but I can show you where to click if you don't know that your pop-up blocker is on and blocking you. but we'll wait for that to take its map screenshots real quick, and then I'll show you. And Firefox has it in a very similar spot. I can't speak to Edge. I don't use Edge a whole lot, but it's the same process. And sorry to hear that your mic wasn't letting you, Paul. Thank you for confirming that it is HUC 12s. So when this pops up, you'll either get the little pop-up window that says save as, or over here where this star is, you'll actually have a little square that has an X in the corner of the square. That basically is, it didn't allow a little pop-up window to show up. So the icon goes right here over this star, and I'll show you that it's not allowed. But it will pop up right at the end of this URL. Firefox has theirs in a similar spot. I don't think it's actually in the URL bar. I think it's next to it. But that's where you're looking if you didn't get that pop-up, is over here in that corner.
And I might just share my personal experience too with Chrome. I had to go into some additional settings on the pop-up blocker. Like, I know there's an option to enable it for a specific URL, but I had to completely disable it across my Chrome browser the last time I played in with this tool. So I don't know if that's still the case, but might be worth exploring.
It is for any sort of download, because basically Chrome's gotten really stringent about viruses, and they don't want you to download a file from a website anymore. So that's why that one's pretty locked down. But if you want the document, you have to go through that process to let the web browser give you the document. But I'll definitely look into the HUC 12 issue. Brandy said you mentioned joining multiple HUCs if you are not. If your unique area of interest is not there, how would you create that? Oh, that's a great question. So I will take a case example that I'm aware of. So I'm going to start by resetting what I'm looking at and explain what I want. So Brandy's example is, what if you have an area of interest that isn't a single one of those watersheds? So on the north end of Denver, there's a tributary right here called Big Dry Creek that drains from the foothills over here all the way to the South Platte on the right side. Big Dry Creek's not HUC 12 watershed. It's actually a few of them. There's upper, middle, and lower Dry Creek. So you'll notice upper, if we walk through what they look like, upper's this section of the watershed. I'll reset that. Back to HUC 12. Oops. Middle's the next one up. It picks up where that one left off, flows this way through town. And then the final one is lower Dry Creek, which is right where it hits the South Platte, going from that area down here into where it actually drains from the creek, Big Dry Creek, into the South Platte River. The way you would merge that is you would run the 9-element plan for each one of those HUC 12s. You would then take those data sets and combine them. You would probably need to do the map interaction offline to get the combination of, say, geology unified across the three of them, but you have the shape files, right? This has the list of the shape files that you can download out of the tool. You join those in something, a GIS algorithm tool like ArcMap, QGIS. There's a few options there, ArcGIS Pro, are options to go do those shapefile manipulations, but this will basically let you analyze each one of those three, and then you kind of aggregate those results. So, and you can think of that per data set, right? Aggregating in the sense of climate is taking the average or taking the minimum or taking the maximum, right? Depending on which, am I looking at average precipitation or maximum temperature, right? That's obvious how you want to do that statistic. In the sense of things like water stream monitoring locations, that's adding, right? The stream monitoring stations in one HUC 12, you want to add that to the list of the ones in the other one. So you could just basically build 3 of these reports side by side, because it only takes 2-3 minutes to really run that many HUC 12s side by side. And then have the 3 documents and merge them offline for that. Any other question on that one? So I download my lower Big Dry Creek. Actually, I could do it with my example with my Plum Creek, but I East Plum Creek and West Plum Creek. I could easily just take those two, merge them into a third document that's both, right? All of Plum Creek. You could easily do that kind of thing. Looks like we got another question coming through. Well, that's a great question. At this time, RAP is a Colorado-specific tool. There are ongoing efforts here at CSU and AUSI to work on generalizing RAP in two different ways. Well, three. One is your area of analysis. We talked about that a little bit, that you're going to be able to, as a feature by the end of the year, specify your own random polygon in Colorado. There's another generalization specific to RAP that is an ongoing conversation to analyze a lot of these national and other scale data sets outside of Colorado, because a ton of these resources are Colorado specific, right? So the water quality standards that we're interacting with in this tool are specific to the Colorado Department of Public Health. It's not the other states, so that data set's not translatable to the state of Delaware or outside of the US or anything like that. But we're working on kind of a different version of RAP. That's why CDPHE is in the URL for this one. This is one specific to Colorado datasets. There's a general RAP tool that actually is going to be developed that allows you to analyze anywhere in the continental United States, all of these national scale datasets. And then the third level of generalization is we're going to have a feature in here that lets you upload your own dataset for analysis. So you could say, I have groundwater data. I have a map of my groundwater aquifer. Upload that into the RAP tool. It analyzes it for your area of interest and dumps it into a report. So you get that screenshot, you get your map, you get your text summary, you get your tabular summary. That is going to be a sub feature that allows you to analyze kind of any data set from any source, because you're the one that uploaded it. It analyzes it, it spits it back as a resource. So RAP right now doesn't do international things. There are some international data sets that we have. You can think about that from the climate side of it. You can think about that from topography, digital elevation maps, that side of it. We have some international resources. But right now, RAP is a Colorado resource, expanding to a national resource with an eye towards an any data source resource. Excellent.
Thanks, Tyler.
Of course. Happy to. I will point out one feature that I didn't really highlight is I'm going to go into irrigated agriculture, because this is a fun one because it's actually interactive. You can specify those breakdowns of what you want to look at, right? Do I want to look at my irrigation type? Is this flood furrow irrigation? Is this a center pivot sprinkler irrigation? You can look at crop breakdown, right? Am I growing corn? Am I growing alfalfa? Am I growing grass pasture land? Am I doing small grains? Right, you can look at those. You'll notice these are interactive summaries that as I walk through the graph, they interact with me. There's a hover, there's a click. You can also download any of these charts as images. So if you want any of these charts in a report, or if you want to customize it, you want to zoom in, you want to exclude some data set, like I want to turn sugar beets and sod farms and vegetables off, and then I want to take this screenshot, maybe turn off wheat, grain, and maybe even corn, right? You can customize what's in these charts and then download those for your particular interest. You can do that. You can also download the raw data out of it, right? So you can turn this into a CSV file, you can turn this into an Excel file, and you can go manipulate it somewhere else to whatever chart you really want to draw, right? You can do that for any of the charts that are in here, right? So every one of these has that same little list of how do you want to modify it. Just like you do on the map, that once you have your area of interest, you can take your screenshot, and that's going to copy that into your screenshot. You can go save that somewhere else. I can go look at it, right? So this is my screenshot. I'll pull that over for you guys to see. That's my screenshot. If I want to change my zoom area, right? If I want to zoom over here that I'm only capturing a little bit of my watershed in Fort Lupton for whatever reason that's important to me, I can retake my screenshot. It'll retake my screenshot. I'll reopen it, and I'll get my new zoomed in extent, right? So you can really customize how this presents your information, whether it's the base map, whether it's the zoom level, whether it's the raw numbers to go do this yourself in a different GIS tool, in an Excel file, in whatever you want to analyze. All the pieces are there that you either have the pre-canned answer or the pieces to make your own version because you really, really, really wanted small grains to be purple instead of green, right? Whatever subjective change you want to make, you can do that symbology wise. In the interest of time, though, I will hop back briefly to my slides and re-highlight our point of contact. You're welcome to reach out to me. My contact is in the chat. Sarah dropped it there. I'm happy to take any questions. That's the sort of stuff I kind of do. You can reach out to OWSI as a whole for the RAP tool, for other resources, or hey, I came across this on your documentation site, tell me more, or ongoing features and development, right? OWSI is a research organization that does active projects with clients and stakeholders that build features into our tools all the time. We just had 2 production launches to 2 tools in the last 2 days, right? There's new features that come online for different reasons. So we can absolutely talk about what's in the pipeline that's not yet public and what we could work with you to go generate if you have the motivation to go look into something like that for a collaboration. You can also reach OWSI as a whole, onewatersolutions.com. That's going to be a good overview of all of the things OWSI. That's our YouTube channel. That's our webinar list. That's our point of contact. That's everything about us and all the documentation on all our tools, RAP included among them. But those are all really good starting points for either reaching out to us or learning more about our organization or our tool as a whole. But that's our presentation today. I'll take a moment for any remaining questions, and we'll let you guys go a couple minutes early so you're not back to back in 1-hour meetings for the rest of the day.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I threw some links in the chat if you need to find the tool or the webinar or our website and contact information. Appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you again soon.
Sounds good. And I'll follow up with the Huck 12 problem with a couple of you that had that.
Sure. It looks like we might have another question.
Sure.
Let me turn.
Can you unmute him?
Yes, your microphone should be activated now. I can't unmute you, but the mic is activated. Still not hearing you.
I'm going to say up in the top right corner should be a mic icon if you're using Microsoft Teams on an application. If you're using it as a web browser, I think it's in the bottom right corner. Just a little mic icon that you can unmute yourself, or the space bar will usually do it.
Paul's saying that we can't unmute and that it's grayed out. I haven't had that issue before, but you might need to just follow up with an email if we can't get your mic to work, or try entering your question back into the chat.
Yep, we're happy to take any questions offline and follow up as necessary if the technology is not going to cooperate today. Well, thank you all for your time. We'll close this one out, and you'll be able to access this recording on YouTube when we publish it shortly.
You might be typing something in the chat, so maybe we'll sit tight. Okay, well, feel free to reach out to us via email, and hopefully we can get connected that way.
Absolutely. We'll take any questions offline. Have a good rest of your day, and we look forward to some follow-ups.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.